Hey guys, it's TheRykerDane. I've got a 2004 GMC Yukon Denali here, and I'm going to show you how to change the water pump. This job is going to be similar for GMC Yukons and Yukon XLs, as well as Chevrolet Tahoes and Suburbans. The water pump is right on the bottom left corner, so it's pretty easy to access. This is a pretty easy job, so let's get to it.
Okay, so after I pop the hood, we'll head over here to the battery, and we're going to disconnect that first, but I'm going to show you where you can see the water pump. You can kind of see it from this side, but you can get a better view from the other side. So don't get too nervous. There's just a few things you need to remove to be able to get down to it. And there it is right there with the about 3 lines coming off it right there. So the first thing we're going to do is just remove the battery terminals. You can remove the negative cable, and then we'll go to remove the top cover that covers the engine, and that's just a simple, you can use a simple socket wrench for that and remove that. And then you can take a 1/4 inch socket or just a flathead screwdriver and remove these 2 bolts right here, or loosen them up so we can remove the air intake hoses here, just one down in the box and one up by the engine. And it just takes a little bit of wiggling to pull it free. And then if you look right here on the side of the air intake hose, there's going to be a little plastic attachment they need to pop free. You can just use your flathead to pull that out. And then you want to loosen this side of the hose next to the air box so we can remove this whole assembly here. And as soon as you get that out, you'll be able to see the water pump a little bit more. There's the main hose that comes off the top of the radiator, and then this hose right off to the right side of the radiator. So the next thing to do is just to slide these hose clamps off. And the nice thing about them is they have a little lock on them, so you can just squeeze until they lock, and then you can slide them back and forth on the hose without having to squeeze and try to slide them off. And if you look at the bottom hose, we're just going to remove the side of the hose from the water pump itself, and then put a little bend in it so it doesn't drain any more fluid out that needs to be. So this is why you want to have a pan underneath that can catch all that fluid that drips down from up top. So you want to take off this top hose and just be very careful so you don't spill any fluid that comes out. There's going to be a couple plastic clips that hold that hose onto the fan shroud, and then a couple other hoses that you just want to get out of the way before you pull it off the water pump. And it's just going to take a little bit of jiggling back and forth to be able to remove that. And just be careful, because there's going to be a bunch of fluid that'll pop out. And as soon as you get that, you can remove that top hose. And the next thing you want to do is remove this fan shroud. And there's 4 little button screws, or not screws, but little buttons that are in this fan shroud that you want to remove, 2 on the left and 2 on the right side. And this is what those button pins look like. All you're going to need is just a flathead. And once they're popped down, or once they're pushed down, you just take your flathead and just right underneath and prime up. As soon as you get those out, then just take your socket wrench and take out the 2 bolts on top, and then you can remove your whole fan shroud. And then once we take that off, you can see the fan, you can see the serpentine belt. We're going to replace that. There's the water pump we need to replace, and then the thermostat down low. And then also, if you can kind of see it down low, there's going to be also an AC belt that we're going to replace, because it'll be a lot easier to do it now than later. So we need to remove this fan first, and all you gotta do is get back behind here and put a big wrench on this fan to break it free. But if you don't have a wrench that big, you can go to your local auto parts store and rent one of these kits that has these big fan wrenches in them, and you just give them a deposit and you can get your money back. But we're going to use this wrench right here, and all you do is just stick it right on the fan, and you have to use a hammer to knock it loose, and just takes a few whacks to get it kind of freed up. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of got it broke free. And once you do that, then you're pretty much done with that wrench, and you can just spin the fan blade off by hand. Just have one hand underneath to be able to catch it so it doesn't fall and break any of the blades. And now we can really see where we're trying to get to. So we need to take off that serpentine belt, and there's the water pump right there as soon as we get that belt off. So you're going to take a socket wrench and go to the tensioner pulley to be able to loosen up that serpentine belt and slide that belt off. And we're going to replace that with a new one. So while you're pulling this off, just remember how it goes on there, or even just take a picture of it so that you can put it on the same way. And as soon as we get that off, then we can get right to the water pump. And there's 3 bolts that we want to take off of this tensioner pulley. I'm going to take that, it's actually mounted to the water pump itself, but we're going to remove those 3 bolts, and they're pretty long, but you want to break those free and just slide those bolts out. They're about 3 inches long. You pull that tensioner pulley off right off the water pump, remove that. The next thing to do is just pull the bolts out for the thermostat housing. We're going to replace the thermostat as well, and then we'll remove these 2 hoses that are attached to the water pump itself. So I just need a regular socket wrench, loosen those bolts up, and remove that thermostat housing. So now both bolts are out. We're going to pull this thermostat housing off, and you'll have some fluid that's going to come out. So you still want to make sure that pan is down low, but just be careful as you pull this out. And there's the thermostat. Looks like it's still in pretty good condition, but we're just going to put a new one in there as long as we're pulled everything apart. So the next thing is to pull these hoses off the left side of the water pump. And again, there'll be some more fluid that comes out, and it's just going to take a little bit of wiggling back and forth, and you can just move those out of the way. And then for the water pump itself, there's going to be 6 bolts to take out. So there's 3 right there in front, and then on this right side there's going to be 3 more bolts that you're going to have to take free. So after you break all those bolts free, you can save one for last and just pull that bolt out. They're about 3 or 4 inches long, and then just grab the whole water pump and pull it straight off, and you'll have some fluid come out. You just want to pull it out and straight up. And that's the old water pump, and we'll put a new one in. So now before we put the new one in, you want to check where the old pump was, and we want to take a razor blade and scrape off any excess corrosion and any kind of gaskets or anything that's been just caked on there. You want to make sure that has a good seal when we put the new one on. So if we go back down low again, we want to go to this tensioner pulley right here because we're going to replace the AC belt, which is this is the AC belt right here, but you just loosen it and then pull that belt off. And just to show you that these belts need to be replaced, you can take your belt and just kind of squeeze them. And if there's a bunch of cracks in them, they definitely need to be replaced because you don't want to have those break while you're driving your vehicle. So I'm going to replace both belts, an AC belt and the serpentine. We've got the thermostat, we've got our antifreeze, and then we've got our brand new water pump that we're going to put in. And with that, we're going to put in some water pump thermostat housing silicone that you want to put on your gaskets to make sure that they seal up really well with the water pump and the part of the engine. So you want to make sure you put enough on there. You don't really want to cake it on there, but you want to make sure there's enough on there to create a good seal. And here's what the old one looks like. The new style is just a little bit different, the way they have the gaskets built in to the old one as compared to the new one where they don't. So here's the front of the new one, and here's the front of the old one. So before we get started with the water pump, you want to put on your AC belt first. Make sure that gets put on and make sure it's the right size and it's nice and snug. So we'll put that on first. And then the next thing to do is to put your water pump on. Just get all your bolts put in and just slide it in there and just start getting a few of them started. And as soon as you tighten them up with a regular socket wrench, you want to use a torque wrench and torque them to spec, which is going to be anywhere from 18 to 25 foot-pounds. And then we can take the hoses on the left side of the water pump and attach those. And then the next thing to do would be to put in the brand new thermostat. So we get the new thermostat made by Murray and just put that right into the thermostat housing. And there's a little notch on the gasket so you know that you have it in the right position. And then just take that whole thermostat housing and put it onto the water pump with the 2 bolts. And then the next thing to do is to put on the brand new serpentine belt. So you want to put that on exactly the same way you took it off. You want to look at your picture that you took. And if you didn't take a picture, you can look right in front of you and there's going to be a diagram for the size engine that you have. But you want to put that serpentine belt on exactly the way you took it off. The next thing to do is to put on your fan. So we're just going to spin that fan on and then use the wrench that you used before to tighten it up. And then the next thing to do is put your fan shroud on. And then put your top radiator hose on. And then all that's left to do is to fill up your coolant reservoir tank with some fluid. And fill up that tank all the way to the top. Let it bubble and gurgle. And then all you need to do is just get into the vehicle. Start it up. As soon as you start it up, you want to turn on your heaters. Turn on the fan. Turn your heat all the way up to 90. And you want to make sure you have your blowers on high for the front and for the rear. And as soon as you're done, you can feel the air coming out. You want to go back to the front of the vehicle and check your coolant level and add coolant if you have to. I hope this video on how to change your water pump saved you some time and money. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.